Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Well, I told you in this second quarter, we're really working on how can we become better business owners and entrepreneurs. The world is changing, the economy is changing, but the thing is, we have to change right along with it. So we've been talking about this 6P business owner formula of how can we make those changes for ourselves in the business. And today, I think I've got another great guest that's really going to help you as a business owner think about your businesses on the changes that you need to make. So Chris is with us today, but what will you help our listeners solve today, Chris?
Well, Gary, thanks a lot. And thanks for having me. I think what we want to talk about is how do we become more adaptable? And how do we take our environment, as you pointed out, which is changing very rapidly, and how do we turn that hesitancy sometimes with change from paralysis to action?
Oh, this is going to be a great conversation. Chris Masiello has built a successful, nearly 40-year career spanning a variety of nationally recognized businesses in real estate and financial service sectors, accounting for over $2 billion in annual sales. He continues to lead a portfolio of successful companies. Chris, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Gary. Good to be here.
Well, let's get right into that, because I tell you, we've kind of set it up that we know the world's changing, the economy's changing and things of that nature. But sometimes the people that change the slowest is sometimes ourselves. And when I'm saying this, if I point a finger at someone, my grandma used to always say, 3 fingers point back to you. So let's just talk about that and throw that out. Change seems to be a challenge for all of us. Why is that?
So I always like to characterize it like this: that we all come by it naturally, and we all come by it equally. And it's simply a matter of, between our first inhale and our last exhale, right? What do we do with that time in between? And so I think from a biological sense, we come by our aversion to change naturally, because if we go back to thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, when the environment around us was a little more treacherous, when there was a change in our environment, and I'll go back to things that are a little more ancient. The birds, you stop hearing birds. Birds flew away. The forest was silent. A twig snapped. Whatever the case may be, it signified that your environment was changing. And you naturally started to scan for threats, and so by way of our lineage, we really come by this very naturally. So then the next question becomes, okay, so we come by it naturally. Well, what do we do about it? Well, part of being able to affect change is awareness. So if we're aware of the fact that we still have, in our biology, in our DNA, this aversion to change, because change around us might signify danger. That's how that's how our bodies and our DNA understand it. But we're in an entirely different situation now, where change doesn't necessarily mean around us that there's an environmental threat. And I don't mean environmental like pollution, environmental like a saber-toothed tiger, right? Sure. Or marauding bad guys going through your village. Like, we don't have that. So what are today's threats? Well, today's threats, I got to go to a meeting, and I got to be with somebody that I'm really not that excited about, or I have a family event, I have to sit next to Uncle so-and-so who I'm not that fond of, or I just got a new computer, or we just got a new phone system, whatever the case, new policy change, whatever it is, right? And what happens is we get confused with what's really a threat, like a physical threat, to what's just a change in just our normal day-to-day life. And so the changes in our day-to-day life don't really pose physical threats to us. It's really how we perceive it. So once we understand that, then we can start to change the programming.
Yeah, and I think that's key, is because especially right now, I mean, we've had this discussion in this second quarter quite a bit with some guests, but things are definitely changing. It depends what business you were in during the pandemic and everything else. But really, since 2012, things have been pretty good for business owners and entrepreneurs.
No doubt.
And the thing is, now they're seeing there is some market change, there is some economy change, there is things that's going on. I mean, there's been change going on, but it's coming now in the business sector that I think people are seeing a little bit more. So I guess my next question to you, Chris, would be, how can we make sense of that change, and how can we take some positive steps to really achieve the desired outcome or the path we want, personally as well as professionally?
Yeah, I have this, that's a really good point, Gary. I have this belief, it's, quote, a belief from Plato, right? No matter where you go, there you are. So whether it's work or personal, it's all the same.
Right.
And so what I would kind of encourage people to think about is start to scan for, when there's change, start to scan for opportunity first, threat second. Not threat first, opportunity second. Okay. And I'll give you a really good example. So one of my businesses, we operate one of the largest, or the largest real estate, residential and commercial real estate companies in northern New England. I'm from New Hampshire. And so that's Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. And of course, the housing market has, taken a little bit of a break, right? Interest rates have gone from, they've doubled in the last 12 months.
Right.
Housing appreciation. I just want to use this as an example. I don't want to get too deep into housing, but housing appreciation has gone from 20% a year to like 3%. But interest rates have doubled. So here's the mindset. The mindset is, if I'm a buyer, and with some justification, I'm not totally, not totally acknowledging it's not an issue, but interest rates have gone up. Well, interest rates have gone up, but housing appreciation has gone down. So the rate of appreciation for housing has gone from, like I said, 20% to 3%. So now what you would say is that interest rates have gone up. It makes the house on a monthly basis less affordable. And for the average family, which is a lot of money, it could be some $700 to $800 to $1,000 a month, right? With the interest rate change. So it's not insignificant. Here's the difference though. Let's just use a 750 number. If you're going to buy the house, and the higher interest rates means it's an extra $750 a month, which again is not insignificant. That is a lot cheaper than waiting to get back into the housing market when homes start appreciating at a 10 or 15% rate again. And we're not too far from that. And so the average sales price in the United States, median price, I think I saw it the other day, it's just tight to 400. Well, 10% is $40,000. The interest rate change, is 10. So now, are we scanning for threats, or are we scanning for opportunities? So the threat is interest rates went up, things are less affordable, I'm not going to move. Well, wait a minute. The opportunity is, yeah, interest rates went up, but housing prices are flat right now. Now's a better time to get in, because when I get in down the road, it's going to cost me 10 to 15 to 20% more for that same property. That's the difference between scanning for threats, scanning for opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make there. We'll be right back. We've got this short commercial message for you. And now back to the show. Well, I think you bring up a really good point there, Chris, that we were talking about before the break there, is really some of those threats and how we can go forward and look at it and stuff. But the thing is we've talked about some of those, but how can we really look at the biggest mistakes and kind of maybe the pitfalls that people make when they're trying to really change some of those aspects of their lives? Because, the nice thing is you brought a good perspective there, looking at it differently. But what's some ways that they can look at that, and what's some mistakes that they make when they're looking at this to make some of those changes in their life?
Yeah, that's perfect. So I think the first thing is become really curious.
Hmm.
Just like live in curiosity. And it's hard to be in judgment and curiosity at the same time. So we have to be aware of our own labels. So if I label something as bad, now of course there are some things that are, worse than others, but let's just say if I take a change in the environment and I label it as bad, right, in my business environment or my personal environment, well, I've passed judgment on it that there's no opportunity, and then that's it. Doors closed. If I label it as, let's just say, interesting, and I want to be really curious about, like, well, what is the impact of this? And you take a step back, now all of a sudden your peripheral vision opens up and you're able to see it really from certainly no less than a wider dimension, but even multiple dimensions about, well, wait a minute, this thing happened and it might create an opportunity here, or it might create an opportunity for a discussion over there, or this gives us an opening to talk about how do we change something within our organization or our personal life. And so I think dropping into curiosity when there's change going on is really critical. And that really gives you the opportunity to open up your field of vision, to start to scan for opportunities and stop scanning for threats. Because once I've said, this is awful, all right, I have scanned only for threat and I've closed off all opportunity just by putting that label on it.
Yeah, I think that's key. And right now, this is so critical. It's kind of interesting that you went that way because, this is where business owners and
Mm,
entrepreneurs that are curious are going to take advantage of the opportunities.
right.
But there's too many of them if they get in the mindset, whatever word you want to use, or I'm not going to change, I'm going to still do it the same way. Just think about it, as the tech revolutions come on and as
Mhm.
things have changed and how many businesses have come on board and different companies. I mean, you've been in the real estate industry for a long time, that's changed of how you do business. So this is an opportunity for most folks. And I've seen it
Huge.
before in the recession. I mean, in my business back in 2007, 2008, there was people taking advantage of it. And then there's
Yep.
others that was crawling
Right.
under a rock. And I think that's where I think it becomes a real opportunity for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I operate a number of different businesses. I do private equity.
Yeah.
And when interest rates started to go up and the stock market started to sputter a little bit, well, we pivoted to things like private banking. And so anytime there's a change in our environment, it it it, it I'm just a huge believer in it. It creates opportunity. We just have to take a step back, and and I think the other, take a step back. Let me finish that. Take a step back, become curious, start to look around a little bit, take a deep breath. Like, we don't have to make decisions right away. Sleep on it. We don't like we don't have to rush to judgment on things. And I think if we can stay away from even judgment of ourselves, right? Where, hey, this is my business, this is my baby. I'm emotionally invested in this. This has been my idea for this business. And if you want, I can give you a quick example. For me, um, and 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 give the ego a little bit of a break.
Right.
Just take the ego, put it on the sideline for a little bit, give it some water, maybe it can go see the trainer for a little bit, get a little bit of rehab. And then it gives you that opportunity to look around without any judgment, and not worry about, well, now the vision for my company has changed. Well, the vision for your company is going to change. It doesn't mean that if you're a consumer centric, high quality company, just because of how you got there changes, it doesn't mean the vision for your company's changed. It's just the pathway. It's just the timeline on how you get there.
Right.
So, and if we have time, I'll share one example with you that for me was a real eye opener.
I think go ahead and do that. I think a perfect time. Let's share that.
Yeah. So again, we operate a residential real estate company. We do about 12,000 transactions a year. So it's a fairly large enterprise. And going back to 2007, we were leaving our existing real estate franchise, and we really couldn't find one out there that we thought was suitable for us. So we were paying our franchisor at the time about $1 million, and which wouldn't be uncommon, for the industry, for a company our size. And I got pretty excited for a minute. I was like, well, that means I have $1 million of marketing money. And so we on very good terms left our franchise, under a natural termination. And we went, as in that industry is called being an independent. So we were an independent company, non-affiliated. And about 4 or 5 months into it, that $1 million that I was so excited about, I realized it's not enough. It wasn't enough to replace the franchise value. And $1 million of anything is a lot.
Right.
And I had to really take a step back and say, you know what? You just didn't think it all the way through. And then for me, it became not that I was right or wrong. It became that a huge learning opportunity for me. I didn't pass judgment on myself. I didn't say, you're a dope, or, nor did I really continue to pursue a strategy that was destined to failure just because it was my idea. I mean, I had a lot of ownership around it, but the next thing for me to do was to own the fact that this is not adequate. And this is a strategic decision that needs to be rethought. And then we've since affiliated. We're a Better Homes and Gardens brand, and we've tripled the size of the company.
Yeah.
And so, how is any of this bad?
Right. But if you would have stayed in, I made a bad decision. Well, I've got to stick with it because I've made that decision. And too many times we do that. Same thing sometimes for businesses that are creating a product. That product is not doing it anymore. We have to reinvent ourselves as companies. And I think that becomes the real key. And you talk a lot about, realizing that it doesn't have to be always the negative. You kind of shared in that. Instead, change can be fun,
it changes the blast gear.
Yeah. Share a little bit of your philosophy behind that.
Well, so if we really draw it back and we think about it, all right, like how we got here, we only got here by change. Like we're doing this on Zoom. Remember when conference calls were a thing?
Right.
Right. So like we only got here through change. We went from horse and buggy to cars to planes, and landing people on the moon. It only happened by change. And the only way that we're going to get to wherever it is, either we want to go, or or wherever we're going to end up, if we're not mindful about it, we're only going to get there through change. It's such a weird juxtaposition for us as a species, Homo sapiens sapien as a species, right? Where we're resistant to change, but yet the only way we survive as a species is actually through change. Right. And I think understanding that paradox is a really good way to start to condition your mind to really embrace the change factor, because it's the only way that we're ever going to get to wherever it is we're going to go. And I think the other thing is, when we resist change, do I want to achieve a destiny, or do I want to meet a fate? When we resist change, we meet a fate. When we embrace it, we achieve a destiny.
Yeah.
Two very different outcomes.
Well, and I love what you talk about the mind. We've talked about that some this second quarter, is really slowing down enough to truly think. And I
Slow
think
down.
that's our challenge as entrepreneurs, business owners, and there's other podcasts that cover it. Everyone has that problem. But my target audience is those business owners and entrepreneurs. Just came off of a live event. And one of the things we did there is I gave them 30 minutes and I said, I don't want you talking to anyone. Gave them a couple questions to think about their business, and truly think about, what are you going to do in this second quarter and this third quarter and fourth quarter to make 2023 be the year that you want to have? And it was tough, I'll be honest. I had to kind of shove them out of the room and say, no, you're not conversing with others. I want you to just go sit in your thoughts and give it some time to give that, because that's where we find solutions and where we're able to solve complex problems and be able to handle the change that's going on each day. As we're starting to wrap up, great conversation. I hate that we were wrapping it up, but I always like to stay under that 30 minutes because we know the people listening to the podcast, Chris, they're busy people too. But what would you share with them? What are some change techniques that you would use the most or share with them that they could implement?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think, like you said, slow it down. Become more aware of your thoughts. Move into curiosity out of judgment. And try to position yourself so that you're more aware of your surroundings. Now, that can be done many different ways. It could be like working with somebody like yourself. It could be reading. It could be doing your own research. But there's no one that's going to really educate you but you. And I think being able to just take a beat, step back, and it will give you the opportunity to be more perceptive of what's going on around you. And I can't over stress the curiosity piece.
Yeah.
When you live in curiosity, you are always gaining knowledge.
Yeah. What a great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, you've written a book, and I want to make sure we talk to them about that and share that. Is basically, it's Change, Short and Simple. Can you give us a little synopsis of that? And then we'll tell them where they can go to get it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, it's the book's Change, Short and Simple. It's a very hands-on, digestible, almost a workbook, and it really is really packed with strategy. And first, it starts with like what you and I talked about well, why do we think the way we think? Why are we wired that way? And then it brings you all the way through from that understanding, because you have to have that understanding. I enjoy history, so I'm a big believer in, well, how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? And so that's kind of what this book really does. And then it gives you there's all sorts of worksheets that you can go through, and a self-evaluation, a place for you to take notes on every page, and it really functions a little bit like a personal field guide for change. And it very, very simple to follow. It's only 100 pages, very actionable, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all major booksellers.
Great. Well, right there's one of your actions that you can take. You're wondering, how can you get into it? Get his book and work through it. Let that be your thought process to get yourself started, what we talk about, because that's going to create that awareness that we discussed there. Chris, share with them your website. And I know we've got a bunch of social media that you're on. We'll have that all in show notes so they can easily access that. I see you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So we're going to share all that information. So if they want to connect with you, they can do that. But go ahead and share your website with them.
Yeah, it's chrismasiello.com, CHRISMASIELLO.com. And if you go there, I've got videos on there, and you can get access to where to buy the book and all that. And if you've got any questions, anybody's got questions, I'm happy to happy to answer them or help out in any way.
Well, Chris, I truly appreciate you being on the podcast. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you one more question. I ask every guest this question, but what's your best business advice or tip that you would give for business owners and entrepreneurs?
I would go back to curiosity. That, really understand where, as change is occurring, your environment, then, as you create your vision, right? Our environments change. As you create your vision, make sure that your priorities are matching your vision. It's one thing to have a vision, but are our everyday priorities aligning us with what that vision is?
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing that. And I always tell audiences, I give them an action item when they leave. And I'm going to tell you the same thing. I'm going to tell you, be curious, but I would also tell you, go pick up his book. Change is short and simple. He has all the information. We have the links in the show notes, but pick that up because let that be your starting guide. I like that he kind of made it as a workbook that you can work through it. And I'll be honest, I'm going to plan on getting it myself because I think the best thing I can do is get that introspection for myself to be able to be more curious and stuff. That's why I love having podcast guests on this. Guess what? I get to learn right along with everyone else that's on the podcast. So, Chris, we can't thank you enough for saying yes to the podcast.
Thanks, Gary. Good to be with you and good to be with your community.
Well, now let's go make it happen. Let's make that change. Let's be curious and let's go make it happen each and every day to really give ourselves that time and space. You can overcome the challenges you have, but of course, we've got to be willing to change to make that happen. As we continue on this process, remember, share this podcast with others. Also, link it to others. You can easily message this. If you've got a friend that needs to hear this right now, share this podcast with them and let them know. And if you'd like it, that helps us continue to grow our podcast. Come back next week and we'll have another great guest for you. Make it a great day. Thanks for joining us.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.